how accurate is The Crucible? The Crucible is a 1953 play by Arthur Miller, which is set during the Salem witch trials. A number of the characters are based off of real individuals at the time. However, many of the characteristics and stories surrounding these characters are entirely fictional. The play was actually written as a response to the actions of the House Un-Americans Activities Committee during the Cold War. At this point in time, there were a lot of political tensions across the US. There were widespread fears that there were hidden communists conspiring amongst society, and these fears led to harsh interrogations and false accusations being charged against innocent people. Inspired by these events, Arthur Miller's play uses the Salem witch trials as an allegory for what appeared to be a contemporary witch hunt spreading across America in the mid-20th century. So while The Crucible may be a popular story that comes to mind when thinking about the events of the Salem witch trials, it isn't, and was never intended to be, a factual retelling of what actually happened. Arthur Miller himself, in a 1953 interview, stated that a playwright has no debt of literalness to history. Right now, I couldn't tell you which details were taken from the records verbatim and which were invented. One of the biggest inaccuracies of The Crucible, however, is in one of its central narratives. The implication that Abigail Williams worked as a servant for John Proctor and that they both had some form of forbidden romance. There is no evidence that this was actually the case, and it is in fact highly unlikely given that the real John Proctor was 60 years old while Abigail Williams was only 11, and that Abigail Williams never actually worked within the Proctor household as the play depicts her doing. In reality, Abigail Williams actually cried out witchcraft accusations against both John Proctor and his wife. Another major inaccuracy is the suggestion that Tituba, who is an enslaved woman within the Paris household, held a forbidden circle of magic that met at the Salem village parsonage. The origins of this myth came from Charles Upham's 1867 work Salem Witchcraft, in which he alleges that a circle of young girls would habitually meet at the Paris household to learn about magic. This narrative was then hugely popularised in Marion Starkey's 1947 book, The Devil in Massachusetts, which likely influenced Miller's narrative of the Salem witch trials in The Crucible. Again, there is no evidence to support this. The only documentation of Tituba engaging in any form of magic was through the creation of a witch cake, which was actually designed in order to try and help reveal the witch who was tormenting the young girls. This was also a form of folk magic, which was seen as something separate to witchcraft. It was only in recent decades that historians debunked this story, making it an excellent example of how the narrative of history changes over time. Of course, it's important to note that there is always a creative license to storytelling, and there is nothing inherently wrong about basing fictional stories off of real individuals and circumstances. This guide is simply for individuals who may have been introduced to the Salem witch trials via The Crucible and are interested in learning a little bit more about the real individuals involved in them.